Hi, my name is Valdora Rice, and I'm the director of Write from the Heart, which is an online writing and literature program for middle and high school students. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about finding resources, how to look up information when you are doing a research project or a persuasive paper or any other type of paper, speech, project for school or academic writing. One of the biggest questions that I get is, I picked a topic. Now, how do I find sources? I just actually got a message today from one of my students that said, where do I even start? Where do I look? Obviously, the first thing that everybody wants to do is they want to Google. But Google doesn't necessarily give us the best sources right at the top, because remember, Google is a business. Yes, it's a search engine, but it's also a business. And people pay to have their results raised in the ranks. Um, People clicking on things makes it raise in the ranks. The more popular it is, the higher it is going to be in the Google rankings. So, how do we know, especially if we're doing a controversial topic? Perhaps you're writing a persuasive paper about vaccines or gun control or any number of other hot button topics, and you want to persuade people for or against whatever your topic is. If we type something into Google about gun control, first of all, we're going to get a gazillion responses. Secondly, part of the problem is, how do we know the information that we're getting is actually accurate, or if it's just Joe Schmo's blog about gun control and it just happened to be something that went viral on Facebook? So now a lot of people have seen it, and we click on it thinking it's a good source, but maybe it doesn't have correct information in it. How do we avoid that? That's a big problem when we're doing research on the internet. Books can help, but when you're talking about a current issue, the books aren't going to have the most up-to-date information in them. They will have background information. If you're doing a research project on somebody in the past, then certainly going to your library and looking at books is a good place to start. And those are going to be more reliable because they've gone through publishers, and they've taken the time to be put in print. But if you're looking for something that's more current, a more current event, books are not necessarily the place to go. Magazines maybe are a better place to go. Newspapers are a better place to go. But not all of that stuff is online. So how do we find that? We can't just go to the library and say, I need a magazine from 1982 about whatever topic I'm covering. The library doesn't necessarily keep issues of every magazine ever printed. There's just not enough room in the library for that. So what do we do with that? Those are the things that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how to find the stuff, how to find your sources, how to find the information you need, and then how to make sure that it is reliable. Or if it's not reliable, how to make sure you know what the bias is. All right, so let's look together at, there we go. All right, I just have a Google page pulled up right now, a search page. We're going to talk about how to search. So let's say that we're doing a project. Let's say we're doing a history project. Let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about some of the more hot button topics as well, or things even not hot button but more recent events. So let's just say that we're doing a research project on George Washington. We'll just pick George Washington because I know I'm going to get a lot of results. So if I type George Washington, oops, I already did because I was looking him up. If I type George Washington into my search results, make this a little bit bigger. The first thing that comes up is Wikipedia. So we're going to start there. Wikipedia is a problem in research. Please, 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 please pay attention to what I'm saying. Wikipedia is not a good source. Why? It's a Wikipedia, it's a .org site. .org sites are generally more reliable than .com sites. Why is Wikipedia bad? Or not good for research? It's not bad. It's actually great. It's a great place to start. But it is bad to quote Wikipedia in your papers and use it as a research source because this Wikipedia is a user database. So I can log in up here. I can go into the George Washington page and I can add a fact. Now, that's why there's these little footnotes and citations here, because they're trying to catch people that say, oh yeah, George Washington had 6 wives. George Washington did not have 6 wives. But I could go in there and I could type in George Washington had 6 wives, and it would take a while for someone to find it, because someone has to find it and say, is that a correct fact or is that wrong? And then question it and then report it and then go and look and say, this is a citation that's needed. And sometimes we see that here. We see something that says citation needed. That's why Wikipedia is unreliable. And if you think that that's not true, when I was in college, Wikipedia it was a newer thing when I was in college. And I had some friends that were computer programmers, and they liked to mess around on websites. They would go in to Wikipedia articles and put incorrect facts in there just to see how long it took for someone to correct it. They were just looking to see, how accurate is this? Is it working? How does it work? And also they thought it was funny because they were in college, and they thought that was a funny joke. So you don't know necessarily if all of the facts in this website are correct in Wikipedia, because people can change it. However, so you don't want to cite it in your paper. However, the really, really, really great thing about Wikipedia is it is a database. It's collected a lot of information for you. Look at all this information about George Washington. That's a lot of information. If I'm writing a research paper, this is a lot of good stuff. So let's say I'm looking at his marriage, since I mentioned he, quote unquote, has 6 wives, because he does not. And it does not say that he has 6 wives, thankfully. It says he married Martha Custis on January 6th. And there's information here about their marriage. And it says the couple created a happy marriage. Again, do we know that that is correct? If I quote that in my paper and some person just put it there, now I look wrong because I put it in my paper. If I want to put this in my paper, or I want to use some of this information, this is the beautiful thing about Wikipedia. Again, pay close attention to this. These footnotes are your friend. I can click on this footnote and it'll jump me to the bottom of the page. This one has a lot of footnotes. It has 507 footnotes. But these footnotes tell you, this one in particular, tells you where they got that information. In this case, it was a book. And I can click on it and there's the book. So I can actually find that book in the library if I wanted to. I can then go and read that book if I wanted to do that. Other Wikipedia articles might not be all books. Let me see if there's one. Here's one here that looks like it's in his death section. There's an article, and I can actually click. Oh, I'm in the primary sources. Look up here. Here's an article about his monument, it looks like. So I can actually click on this and it'll take me right to the article. Now I know that this information really came from this article. I don't have to wonder if someone changed the information on Wikipedia. I know it came from this article. So Wikipedia is great because of all of these footnotes. I can go through here, I can read this, I can say, oh, I'm interested in this, click on the footnote, and I can click, here's another article from C-SPAN. I can click on that, and this was a survey that C-SPAN did. I don't know what it is, but there's some facts and statistics there because I didn't read the Wikipedia article. But you can see there's a lot of sources here. A lot of them are from books, but there are some from articles. Again, if you're going to go with more of a more recent issue or a hot button topic, you're going to find a lot more articles down here from magazines or periodicals than you are books, which is fine. Again, as long as you use Wikipedia to get to the actual source and you use that source in your paper as your topic or as your research. If I want to use something about the monument, then I can click on it, and this is an essay from a magazine that's online, and I can look at what this article has to say about this looks like Thomas Jefferson, but I can look at this article and read this article and decide if I want to use it in my paper or not. And there might be more information in this article because it's probably just one sentence in the Wikipedia page. So that is how you should be using Wikipedia. You should be using it as a place to get more information, but you should never, ever, ever, ever quote Wikipedia in your actual paper. You should always go to the source and quote that source. All right, so let's go back to our Google search. Wikipedia is first. Then we have whitehouse.gov. That's going to be a really good site because anytime you see .gov, that means it's a government site. The information there is going to be very accurate. So we lucked out with George Washington. We can go right to whitehouse.gov, find out information about George Washington. But look, it's not a lot of information. There's just a couple paragraphs. This is not a detailed article about George Washington. Certainly not as long as the Wikipedia page. Certainly not as long as a book. So that might give us information. We know it's good information, but it's not a lot of information. Let's see what else we've got. We've got history.com. Well, I know history.com is a good site because I know that I just know that site, and I know it's the History Channel and history.com. And again, let's look and see. Well, this article looks a lot longer. There's more information here. It keeps going and going and going. Now, this is one that I could quote from. So maybe I don't even want to go to the Wikipedia if I find this article. This might really help me. So history.com is a good site. I know history.com. But anytime you see .gov or .edu, you can pretty much guarantee that that's a good source. Anytime you see .com, you need to say, well, what is this? Is this a well-known source like history.com? It's History Channel. They fact check things. They present information with historians. We know that we can trust that source. Or is it something that is like joeschmoesblog.com? WordPress.com is going to be somebody's blog. So we don't want to necessarily use that in our research. If we want to quote an everyday person, then a blog's a great place to go. But not necessarily for facts and statistics. So if I'm doing a research project on George Washington, I have a place I can go for sources. I have a very short article. I have a medium-sized article. There's more stuff. There's the video. Now I'm to George Washington University. Now hold up a second. That's just a university that's named after George Washington. This doesn't help me at all. I can go down here a lot more. Britannica.com. Okay, that's Encyclopedia Britannica. That's a trustworthy site. I can click on that. What do we have? Oh, there's a good bit of information here. So this would probably be a source I would use for my paper. And I don't know what the millercenter.org is. So let's see. Let's see what that is. But it's a .org, so it probably is a little bit more reliable. The order goes .gov and .edu are definitely reliable, trustworthy sources. .org, it can go either way. .com, you really need to make sure you research and make sure you know that it's a good site. So the Miller Center, I have no idea what that is. It says UVA Miller Center. How do I check to make sure that this is a good source? Well, I want to look for the About page. Let's click on About and see what it is. The Miller Center is a nonpartisan affiliate of the University of Virginia that specializes in presidential scholarship, public policy, and political history. Well, there you go. Literally never heard of this before. Right now, when I Googled it, so I'm learning right along with you. Apparently, the Miller Center is part of the University of Virginia. I can trust the University of Virginia. These are professors. These are people who study George Washington. The information I'm going to find here is going to be accurate. It's not going to tell me that he has 6 wives. It's going to give me good information about George Washington. Sweet. I can trust this site. It took me, 5 seconds to find the About page and click on it. And now I know I have a good source. And there's essays on his life. Let's see. Family life, since let's stick with marriage. These are all articles, essays, and this is a short one, but there's essays all about George Washington. Awesome. I would definitely use this site. So I now have 3 good sources, perfect. 1 really short source, and 1 Wikipedia that I can use to find other sources if I need them. That's great. That George Washington, there's a lot here. What if you pick somebody that's really obscure, though? Or you pick somebody that, maybe there's something that has a lot of information about it, and it's a little bit more difficult. Like, let's even pick, let's pick the Titanic, because here again is Wikipedia, and we can use that to find sources. But here we go. Here's a confusing thing. Here's the Titanic, the 1997 film. Well, that was set on the Titanic, but that is not a true story. It is a made-up fictional story. So I would not want to go to this Wikipedia entry and find out things about the Titanic. And if I go down here, this is Britannica.com, so this is Encyclopedia Britannica. This is a good source. Here's another thing about the movie. Can't use that. Throw it out. Here's History.com. Okay, that's good. We talked about History.com. But when I go down, here's TitanicPigeonForge.com. That's a museum. Okay, that's probably good information because it's a museum. Now I'm already going to the next page. National Geographic Society, great. Titanic, Rotten Tomatoes. This is a website that gives movie reviews. Again, not a good source if I'm doing a research paper about Titanic. Titanic sinks in real time, YouTube. Probably not helpful for my paper. You can see even as we're searching here, 10 mistakes that sank Titanic. I don't know who put this video up. I don't know if this is going to be an accurate video. I need to find out information. Obviously, maybe this YouTube video might be good because I see the National Geographic symbol there. So that might be a good source. But who's this person? I don't know. It could, again, just be somebody that's putting up videos on YouTube. So you can see even something like Titanic becomes a little bit more complicated. And then you go into something like, let's just, for fun, type in gun control. Procon.org. I have no idea what that is. Here's Britannica. So this is going to give me a history of gun control. The ATF.gov. This is going to give me some history about gun control. Wikipedia. Again, maybe go there for sources. What is justthefacts.com. I don't know. If I click on it, let's look at it here. Justthefacts.com. Be informed about gun control. What is this site? Who made this site up? What information do we have? So let's look and see if we can find, oh, here's the About Us. So let's click the About Us. Just the Facts is a nonprofit institute dedicated to publishing comprehensive, straightforward, and rigorously documented facts about public policy issues. Okay, maybe that is a good site because it says they have standards of credibility. They use research from these places. All right, well, I might have clicked over that because justthefacts.com sounds like a little bit of a scammy website. So it's good that I checked. Maybe I can trust that. But if you go further and further down, if I click something like pro-gun control, I'm going to get information, opensecrets.org. Again, I don't know what that is. Senator Rand Paul, well, he's a senator, but if you know anything about Rand Paul, you know that he has a particular perspective. Now, that's not a bad thing to look at someone that has a particular perspective. It's good to look at something, and it's good to understand where something's coming from. A really helpful website to look at that is this media bias chart. It's here's the website, adfontesmedia.com. I think it's adfontesmedia.com. That's the website for this. This chart is amazing. This person has put, and there's an interactive one so you can actually search. But this person has put in a lot of the sources that we see every day. Let me make this just a little bit bigger so that we can see it because there's a lot of stuff going on here. This chart has across the top, here's the middle, skews right, meaning skews conservative, and skews left, meaning skews more liberal. So there's skews left, there's hyper-partisan, meaning that they're more political and a little more out there, and most extreme is like your extreme right or left or extreme right people. And you can see that there's sources here, a lot of them are in the middle, and then here this is value and reliability. More reliable, less reliable. So I don't want to find a source that's down here in the bottom. This is probably not a good source. You can see over here there's a lot of stuff going on. I haven't heard of some of these, but some of these I've heard of. Some of these I've heard of. You might be surprised that some of the things that you like are down in this orange area. And you can see even some of the things that people go to. Fox News, for example. Fox News TV is down here. Fox News Web is up here in this higher yellow, almost green area. Why is that? The web is articles that are researched, that have footnotes, that are fact-checked. They still have a bias. They're still skewed to the right because it's a conservative network, and that's okay. But the information is a little bit more reliable than TV. Why? Well, because on TV, you have TV personalities. It doesn't matter if it's right or left or conservative or liberal. Anytime you have a television show, those people are personalities, and a lot of times they'll give information or they'll say something that maybe isn't accurate, and they'll correct it later. But TV is moving faster, that 24-hour news cycle. So in general, TV is going to be less reliable than web or print. You can see the same thing over here. Here's CNN Web and here's CNN TV. Here's MSNBC is pretty close on TV and web, but you can see they're still a little bit different. Now, it is tempting to look at this and say, okay, well, I want something right in the middle. I'm only going to look at AP, or I'm only going to look at PBS. Being on the left or the right isn't necessarily bad. It's just knowing if it's on the left or the right. So, for instance, if you're going to pick a topic like gun control and you happen to be conservative, these are probably the sources that you know. If you're liberal, these are the sources you probably know. And those sources will be helpful to get you information to support your side of that particular argument. But part of a persuasive argument is reading what somebody who disagrees with you believes. What what is the other side saying? It's a persuasive paper and you're trying to persuade people to your side. But what is the other side? What is the argument on the other side? This kind of chart can be really helpful and say, okay, if I'm, say, on the left and I'm more liberal about gun control, or I feel more the way that some Democrats would feel about gun control, I would be looking at these sources. But if I want to see what Republicans are saying or what conservatives are saying, I should go and seek out, go to foxnews.com and read some Fox News articles, because that's going to help me understand the other side and be able to say, the other side believes this, but this is why they're wrong. So we want to look at both sides. It's not bad to look at sources that are a little bit left or right of middle. We just want to stay away from the red area, and really, honestly, the orange area. It's good. The higher up you can stay, the better. And as you can see, if they're reliable, the closer they are toward the middle. They try to take some of that bias out. That's not always true. There's a couple way over here. I don't know what all of these sources are, and there's a couple, but these are down in the red and they're way over here. So this is a really, really great website to look at this media chart, and it does look like you can search for a particular, you can go to the interactive one and search for a particular website and see where it fits on that chart, and that can be really helpful. All right, so that's a good way to check, especially mainstream media, where they fall. If we're doing research, another place, though, that is really helpful is to get away from Google, is to get away from the mainstream media, because it is biased. One way or another, mainstream media is biased. A better choice is to look at magazines, is to look at journals, like professional journals, educational journals. But those are really hard to find, and we don't always have access to them because they're specialized. So it can be really difficult to locate something like that, or locate something that has more information. However, in this day and age, we have this beautiful thing called the library, and we have this wonderful, wonderful thing online called library subscription services. So I am going to show you, this is my local library. So I'm going to pull up my local library. You can do the same thing at your local library. I also recommend, if you live in a university town or a town that's near a university, look at your university library. It is possible sometimes for residents to get library cards for the university. You can go and ask for that. The other thing is, if you live near a big city, I live in a small town, but we live right near Pittsburgh. Our library has a reciprocal deal with Carnegie Mellon Library in Pittsburgh. So I can actually go to any library in Pittsburgh and use my Indiana Free Library card in the library in Pittsburgh and check out any book in Pittsburgh and return it to my local library, and they'll send it back. I can actually have it mailed here. I can go pick it up, and I can get access to their online resources. So if you can't find something at your local library, ask your librarian if they have a reciprocal relationship with any big city that you live near. Is there a library in the big city that we can do an interlibrary loan through? It's called interlibrary loan with books. Or is there something I can get access? Will my library card get me access to the information and the resources that a larger library in the city has? So talk to your librarian about that. They're the first line of defense. But on the library website, on your local library, every library now, I would say all libraries, subscribe to an online services. They're called library subscription services. Universities and libraries subscribe to these. Sorry, I'm trying to look to see where this is. I think it's on online programs. No. Yes. Nope. I had it up the other day and I just need to find it. Give me a second. Services. Digital services. So it's a little bit, a librarian could have helped me do that. Here are the digital services that my library has. They have ebooks and audiobooks. They have digital magazines. It says 50 popular magazines at my fingertips. I can go look at the current issue of magazines. Doing research, check out our Power Library. And there's even a Power Teens library for middle school and high school students. So let's go ahead and just click on that since that's what we're talking about. Power Teens is online resources. So you can chat with a librarian. You can use your e-card. If you need a card number to access the resources, you can get one. Here are the resources that they have. These are all, here's a high school edition of, I would recommend Gale. Gale is a huge resource. And then I would also recommend, where is it? This EBSCO. This is Bookso. I'll show you where the other one is in 1 second. But Gale, let's go to the high school edition of this. And all I need to do is put in my library card number. And your library might be a little bit different, but that's essentially the same process that you would use. Gale is a great resource. It's these sources, Gale, and I mentioned EBSCO as well. They look a little bit like search engines. I can put George Washington right on in here. But the nice thing is they find journal articles, they find magazine articles, they find periodical information, and they find even books that are full PDF books that you can search. So you don't have to go to the library and like flip through the pages. You can actually look right at their editions of their books. So let's go ahead and search George Washington. Oops, I didn't spell that right. Let's try and spell it right and see if we get better results than that. Oh, we did. Okay. Look at these results. Make this a little bit bigger. 14,000 magazine articles, 9,000 academic journals, 838 books that are PDF that you can look at, 65,000 news articles, 147 images. If you need images or pictures for your paper, pay attention. Do come here. This is a great place to come find pictures. There's videos and audio. Now, some of these are very specific. Well, this one says study results from George Washington University. Well, we don't care about George Washington University. We only care about George Washington. So we can revise our search, and we can do an advanced search, and we can eliminate. If you can say not university. It's hard to talk and type at the same time. Oops, and I forgot to put in George Washington. I want George Washington in here, but not George Washington University. That took me down. Now I only have 3,600 journal entries, 161 books. So now I have stuff about George Washington. Here's something about the Andre dilemma. I don't know what that is. I could click on it and read about it. These are all more specific things about George Washington. I would recommend that for these, you do a Google search first, and then you come here and you look up, like, let's say you want to look up a specific thing, like George Washington's marriage. I know I'm picking on poor George today. George Washington. Let's just see what comes up. Oh, I have to do that advanced search because it's bringing up. So let's do George Washington and marriage, not university. Here's one right about their marriage. Greatness thrust upon them. Francis Wilson on America's likable, if unlikely, first couple. Let's see. It's a book review about a book. So it's talking about a book about George and Martha Washington. That might be interesting for my paper. I'm going to go back to the results. First among equals, George Washington, The Economist. This is a magazine article. I can look at academic journals. There's 3 of them. Magazine. Here's one specifically about Martha Washington. It's a study on Martha Washington. It's a journal from the History Honor Society, and it's about Martha Washington. And this looks like a book review of a book about her. So we kind of have to look through the results, but you can find very specific things about a specific instance. You could do the same thing with Titanic. If you are doing something, let me just go back to the basic search here, back to the first page. If you're doing something that's a little bit larger, they have this wonderful thing called a topic finder that I was playing around with. If you need to narrow down your topic, this is a great place to go. If your library has Gale OneFile, the high school edition, go and do this. If you're looking for a topic, watch what happens when I put in gun control. It helps me narrow down. I could talk about firearm ownership. I could talk about California policies, New York policies, guns in high schools, Supreme Court cases about guns, mass shootings, race. There's all different things here. If I click on Supreme Court, now it's going to help me narrow it down. Do I want Second Amendment? Do I want stuff that CNN said about gun control? In the Supreme Court, I don't really know what that is. Here's another Second Amendment. So it helps me narrow down what it is that I want to talk about in my paper. So that's a great thing if you're looking for a topic. I would highly recommend Gale if your library has. There we go. If your library has Gale, I would highly recommend it. I would also highly recommend EBSCOhost. It's also called Academic Search. If we go out of the teen here and go to the regular one, I would recommend you go both places. I'm going to list all my and this is nice. I didn't know they did this. It helps me elementary school research. If you have younger brothers and sisters, there you go. I can list all my e-resources, and it's this academic OneFile. It's this academic search. Sometimes it's called Academic Search, sometimes it's called EBSCOhost. But it's, again, very similar to Gale. I really, really like it. It's a really good way to search, and you can search here. You can select full text. You can select what kind of publication you want. You can select books. You can select magazines. However you want to do it. It's a really great way to find magazines without flipping through the magazines to find the thing you want. This finds it for you. This is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful resource for finding information. And that's all on my local library's website. I just went to the online services and clicked through and found the e-resources as you saw me do. Your local library might have It might not look, it might not be Power Library. That's the particular one that our library must subscribe to. It might be a different, it might be a different source. Um, but asking for Gale is a good one, and asking for EBSCO or Academic Search is a good one. But just call your library and ask them, how do I search for sources? Um, what e-sources do you have available for me, and how do I get on there? And they will give you a free library card, and your free library card will give you access to those sources. So that's just a little bit about how to find sources in a way that's a little bit deeper than just doing a Google search. So if you take anything away from this, start with a Google search. Let's kind of sum it up here. Start with a Google search. Don't trust Wikipedia. Use it as a search or a source, not as something that you would quote in your papers. Go to your local library, call your local library, or use their online website. Use the library subscription services from your library. Check your sources against media bias. The media bias chart is a great place to start. If you know the bias of the particular source that you're using, that's fine. But if you're using mainstream media, check the bias. Make sure that you know where that particular article is coming from. It will make your paper stronger. So that's a little bit about finding resources. I hope you found that helpful. I hope that you contact your local library and start using the resources that they have, as well as doing a Google search, and that you can be successful in all of your research project needs.